All wings report in.
Red 10 standing by.
Red 7 standing by.
Red 3 standing by.
Red 6 standing by.
Red 9 standing by.
Red 2 standing by.
Red 11 standing by.
Red 5 standing by.
I have you now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 585 Squadron podcast, where we like to fly silly. I am Nate. I fly scum.
I'm Nick, the Imperial guy.
I'm Pat, and nothing for the rebels got nerfed.
Yep. That's pretty much. There we go. That's the podcast. We're just talking about the FAQ today. I mean, we have some more stuff on the docket. We're coming close to the end of competitive season, so we're going to be talking about a lot of our what's coming up in our next regionals. We're going to be going to Syracuse, but I mean, they dropped the FAQ on us just before regionals, so that FAQ is going to be changing everything, and that's what we want to talk about. Yeah. So, I mean, let's just get right into the thick of it. We're going to start off with our normal section of what we're flying, and this is what we are flying since the FAQ, because that thing just totally turned our lists on our head, and I absolutely, I'm scum, so of course I run Manaru, and that just kind of stopped half of my builds.
I don't want to talk about the FAQ.
You don't want to talk about the FAQ. So
I don't want to talk about it.
All right, so how about we have someone talk about it who's very excited because his faction can finally do something. Pat, you want to start? What you've been flying since the FAQ?
I most certainly do. Allow me to describe how your factions are less good now. No, I think. So I was very excited when the article came out. I think it's a measure of the card. You know, there's pretty much 4 big ones, right? And it's a measure of how powerful these cards are, that they got nerfed. And really, for Rebels specifically, there's nothing that's so crazy overpowered that you need to nerf it. You know, you can say Biggs, but, you know, Biggs is an annoyance. It's not overpowered. And, you know, it's not showing up in, like, every single Rebel squad.
Right.
So, but I think all of these nerfs are good for the game, even the ones that people are complaining about. So I guess we can start out with Manaru.
Well, yeah, instead of doing what we're flying, let's just go ahead and say what the FAQ was first, and then we can go back to what we're flying. So, Pat, yeah, go ahead and start with Manaru. What changes have been made with the FAQ? Just a quick review.
So, her ability is untouched except for they've added a range ability. So you still assign all focus, evade, and target lock tokens to another ship, but that ship now has to be at range 1. And this is probably the biggest one out of all of them, in my opinion, and I think it was the most needed because I'm trying to think of a scum squad that didn't have Manaru in it or wasn't made better by having Manaru in it, and I can't think of too many.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. That Manaru Range 1 made it a very unappealing ship to fly. And I had a hard time building lists that just, why not include Manaru? If I have like 30 points sitting around, just why not throw it in? It's just extra actions for everybody. Yeah.
I think a lot of the complaints around this nerf is, you know, people are saying, why couldn't it be range 1 to 2? But I have a feeling it probably was range 1 to 2 at one point. But if you look at the Peritani list and how powerful that is, range 1 to 2, it's still very, very easy to make that list work. You have to remember that the Jump Master has a barrel roll. So if you're using it in a Mind Link list, which Peritani is, you can use your action to barrel roll as long as another ship has focused. As long as you start out within range 3, you're definitely able to barrel roll into range 2 very easily, right? So I really think Peritani and how well it's done, I think there's going to be 8 system opens total. I think there's been like 5 or 6 so far. Peritani's won 4 of them. So I think that's why it's range 1. Now, Peritani, I still think is a list that you'll see, but it's not... If you're good at flying Peritani, it'll show if you play in a mirror match because you'll be better at using Manaru.
Right.
And you have to make a choice now, right? You either fly in formation all of your ships, making you a lot more predictable, making it easier to actually just go in and kill Manaru first, or you leave one of your ships aside from Manaru and so that ship will never be able to be assigned, an extra focus token. So, maybe that's another target. Maybe you leave Fenrel off to the left, and you have Asajj and Manaru start on the right. Now, as your opposing player, I can go ahead and choose to go after Fen, knowing that Manaru has to duck across the board to get to Fen in order to, keep feeding him those focus tokens. So it keeps ships that are very good in the Scum faction, like Fen, still very good, but it doesn't turn Fen into kind of a Soontir Fel, of a couple waves ago where it's, impossible. It feels like it's impossible to hit him sometimes, right? And that was Peritani, at times could make Fen feel like that, and Asajj as well, with her ability to kind of add evades, and give stress and then cancel them for an evade. So I like the range one. I think it's a really, really good, good nerf. And I think that the other jump masters, now you might see more of them, different types of jump masters. You might see Dengar outside of a Dengaru list. You might see the Tel Trevura one that can kind of stay alive after he's dead for a turn.
That was my favorite one right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I feel like
it might be useful.
Yeah, I think, like, I also agree Manaru needed this, and, like, I didn't want to lose that ability of transferring tokens, because it's awesome, and I felt like it was balanced, but the range 1 made it, that makes sense. Most other support things are range 1, 2. I fly Palub frequently, and he's a debuffer, and the fact that he has to get range 1 or 2 means if I don't get the ability off, that means I messed up, and, like, that I like that for Manaru.
Yeah, for sure.
Nick, what do you think about this, the Manaru?
You guys know as well as most other people that I've flown against that I don't know too much about other lists, other factions.
Mm-hmm.
But I do appreciate the idea that Manaru now has to come screaming at me as a bumper. If you guys, I think last podcast or the podcast before that, I did have one of the most amazing battles that I've ever had that ended within 2 squad points, and I will say that he won it partially because his Manaru was able to hide in the corner and just sit there and turn barrel roll, and just feed the rest of the list. So I feel like that would be a severe change to the outcome of that game.
Right. Yeah, I like that Manaru got this debuff. It's kind of, it's fair. But the one thing that's not fair, one debuff that was very much more needed than this, that massively changed the game, I would say would be Zuckuss, which is the next guy on our list. Originally, Zuckuss was a crew member for Scum only that said you can take any number of stress tokens you want when your opponent is rolling their defense dice. You can choose any number of them, receive that many stress tokens, and reroll them, period. The adjustment that they made in the FAQ is that you cannot use this ability when stressed. So if you take 3 stress to make your opponent reroll 3 of their defense dice, you cannot use that until you've cleared all 3 of those stress. Anybody want to talk on this craziness?
Well, that makes me feel good. I think the first time I saw that list, I lost my shit, all of my shit, and I was like, this guy is making my Imperials have no defensive die, and he's going to hit me hard, and I might not be able to hit him that hard back. So it was kind of demoralizing.
Yeah, I remember you just collapsing into your chair and being like, I don't want to do anything now. Just having like a midlife, or just having like a crisis.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think the point of aces, but specifically in the Imperial faction, they kind of specialize in this, is high risk but high reward when it comes to defensive abilities. So like Soontir Fel or Whisper or Omega Leader, even the TIE Strikers with their, they have low hit points, but they're able to kind of dart around and maybe get out of arcs. That was always kind of the Imperial MO, and Zuckuss basically was just like, nope, all risk, because it only takes one blank out, right? And you've already used Palp or whatever to just make one of your, 30-point ships or 40 points if it's Whisper, just completely explode. And so, the ability of a lot of scum lists to just basically ignore stress was just too powerful, made it too easy to use this. And now I think if you're an Imperial, I think you actually, we'll get to the Imperial nerfs later, but I think you make out in this scenario. I really think the nerfs to Manru and Zuckuss benefit Imperials more than the nerfs to the Imperial cards hurt them. So I'm really glad that they did this, and I still think you can use Zuckuss, right? There's the Inspiring Recruit card from the U-Wing expansion. If you put this and Zuckuss on a ship, you can reroll 2 dice a turn and then do a green and still be able to use it.
And Wing Leader.
Which I think is...
And Wing Leader.
And, yeah.
Do it. Pile on the stress and just
that,
clear it out every turn. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's lots of ways to remove stress in the game. So I don't think Zuckuss is gone. I just think, again, same with Manru, you have to actually think about it as opposed to, why would you, if you have 1 crew slot and you don't care about stress, would you ever put like Forlom on a ship as opposed to Zuckuss? I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, now maybe you have that choice. Maybe you take Forlom instead, which I think is still a great card for 1. I think it's 1 point.
Yep. Both of them 1 point.
That's a great crew card for 1 point, and now I think Zuckuss is more in line with that cost. But I also think that we're going to see stress kind of return as well. So like Rebel Stress Spot will be able to shut this down, and so it's not an auto include anymore. It's when you include it, you're playing to a certain strategy, and if there's bad matchups you can come against, and I think that's great for the meta when you bring a powerful list. Now all of a sudden has some matchups where if you run into that, and you've banked entirely on this type of Zuckuss ace killing list, that you're going to be in trouble. So I think that's good.
Yeah, especially with now that Atani Mind Link started off being kind of a big deal, and now it's even more of a big deal, especially with Paratani. I think Paratani's where it really hit its stride, where it's like, okay, we got to do something about this. Now, in combination of the nerfs and what is happening with the scum, the fact that people are going to be bringing out stress bots and other things to cause stress is really going to kill that any mind link lists out there. People are getting used to running stressors, and it's just getting intense now.
Yeah, Asajj Ventress takes place at the beginning of combat, so if the ship carrying Zuckuss is in range 1 to 2 of Asajj at the beginning of combat, Zuckuss is essentially turned off immediately.
Yep.
You've also got on the YV666, which Zuckuss was frequently found on. Well, guess what you can't do now? You can't do a 0 stop maneuver, right? And then Zuckuss.
Yeah.
So that was very powerful previously. Now, no, you have to 1 forward, and then you might, the other ships might be able to get out of arc.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Zuckuss is one of those cards that just like they rushed it out the door, and because they did this, or because they rushed it out, it just ended up being too strong. They didn't take into account how often it would get used and how most ships, well, not most ships, but any big ship that's going to be carrying it can basically just say, oh man, I have tons of stress, and just ignore it.
Yeah. I think they thought that the fact that you get stressed from it would be a deterrent, but I don't think in playtesting something like Dengaroo came up. I really don't.
Yeah, no.
I think they were surprised with it as well. Like, oh, someone did this. Stress doesn't matter to Dengar anymore. Okay.
Yeah. But that's about it for the scum nerfs. I mean, we very much needed it. I hated seeing jump masters everywhere I went, and that's basically what they fixed. Now we're gonna see some other scum ships come out of the woodwork, and I'm really excited about that. But I'm not the only one that got hit with a nerf stick. Nick, you wanna talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, my overall impression is I'm a little bit happy with it, but it hit hard, and my list that I brought to regional would pretty much disappear now. So I was forced to go back to the drawing board. Luckily, I had a lot of conversation with Pat, and I think I know what I'm bringing to Open. But so talking about what got nerfed on the Imperial side. First and foremost, and I'd say the MVP of the Imperials got hit really hard, and it was much needed. The Defenders, that title that gave the -2 and gave the evade for free, where there was no condition, no matter what, you got it. That was brought down to earth here. Now I think the condition for it is if it overlaps an obstacle, hits a ship, is stressed, no more evade token, and you're just a normal ship. And I think that brings it to a fair level.
Right.
And I think personally for me, that means that I'm not shoehorned into flying it, that exact ship. So I was able to get a little creative with the list and have more fun with the list rather than being forced into a 30 or 28 point ship that just kind of comes in and has free evade, extra life, 3 evade die, and is ready to shoot at anything that comes its way.
Right. Yeah, I feel like this is kind of like the title adjustment was a mere reflection of Manaru, just from the other side. It's basically you can have your abilities that are really cool and really strong, but you just have to fly better to get rewarded for it.
Right. You do have to fly better, but like you said, the stress bots are just going to sink it. I intentionally would take my defenders before and ram them into ships just so I'd get the evade and still be, have a good target at someone. Well, that's pretty much gone now. I mean, I can do that, but okay, if there's a blocker in front, you put someone there. Now all of a sudden you're shooting at the defenders. He has one less evade, so it's not a favorable position. So
right, and it makes the whole sorry, interrupt. It makes the whole like swarm leaders standing behind Kylo Ren and just driving the train into the back of them impossible. You have to actually fly him better.
Yeah, I will say, Nick, your regional list was flying the PS1 defenders. I feel like they're actually much better off because than some of the other defenders because they get to move first, so you know if you're going to bump. So that is pretty cool. But I think overall, the fact that defenders are so predictable, you know what I mean? There's a 3 bank, a 3 hard, or a 4K. Let's be honest, unless you're Countess Ryad, that's what you're doing.
Right.
So it makes it easy for them to block. I like that a stress bot can get them, that Asajj can get them with the stress, although Asajj doesn't quite work as well because they've already got the evade by the time her stress comes down. But then, unless you're putting the tie title that makes all the banks green on them, you have to go straight the next turn. So
right.
I think honestly, aside from this makes every defender less powerful except for maybe Countess Ryad, who has lots of greens, can do those K turns, is kind of more immune to stress. I think she's still good. But I think the interesting thing that it does for me, because I actually really like, and Nick, I think you feel the same way, you really like the Tidy title, right? with the cannon double tap.
I do. That's one ship that I might be running, and I love that.
Yeah, and I feel like that Vessery with the TIE D title is actually better now than Vessery with the TIE X7 title, because Vessery still gets his target lock even if he's stressed, even if he bumped. So if you pair him with ships that give him target locks in like a triple ace list or something, I really feel like the TIE D title with I'd probably either Ion or Cannon depending on the pilot skill of your other ships, but the idea that he can get that free target lock makes the TIE D title work a lot better on him now, which is really cool. You can get target locks for both your shots, even if you're stressed, even if you bumped. So that I really like that idea.
Right. I'm kind of on the fence about that. I enjoy flying it, but for a small ship with not a ton of extra life, to have I think between 40 and 45 points, that's still you got to really be on your A game when you fly that.
Yeah, you got to keep them as cheap as possible. It's kind of the same thing as Quick Draw. Like, I love that ship, but like I'm always hesitant to throw too many points into him because as our we'll get to what we flew in a bit. But Nick, you and I flew a great game where we both had Quick Draw. It was just It was
Yep.
just 20 minutes of pure blowing stuff up. So
Yep. Yeah, that was hilarious.
yeah,
Yeah.
But
Kinda was,
I guess the big one to continue on with the Imperials is Palpatine. Palpatine's a big one. In reality, from what I understand, it looks pretty small, where it's only that Palpatine has to declare when he's going to be using it, whether it's an offensive or defensive role, which you can claim ahead of time. It does take a lot more strategy on the player's portion here, but the magic of Palpatine that was there was simply that if you needed that one small leg up, you could use it whenever, however, where after you roll the dice. Now it's before, and I feel like that's really gonna impact people. And honestly, for a 2 crew slot with all the new crews coming out, I might just drop Palp.
wow.
Yeah.
I
yeah, I agree with that. I think I actually really like the nerf, and people are like, "Oh, now he's too expensive." He's still an amazing card. Like read his ability. If he goes off like 3 times during the whole game, paid for himself instantly. You know what I mean?
right.
Yeah,
I feel like one thing I noticed with that is I did feel like 8 points was a lot for Palpatine now that they changed the ability because it potentially can go to waste now. But it's still incredible. I kind of felt like it maybe should have gone down to 7 points versus 8. It is only a 1 point swing, but that really, I don't know. I kind of feel like it opens a lot up. But then again, we were trying to get rid of Palp mostly rather than like make him better, and that kind of might be what that did. So I'm kind of like very on the fence about it, but I just thought it was a cool idea to do that.
right.
I gotta say, there, Emperor Palpatine is in a lot. It's a lot of lists for Imperials. Like I really like Imperials. I really like flying them, even though I'm a Rebel player. But I always liked flying triple. Like 3 pretty good aces, and there was always the option to add Palpatine in the Lambda shuttle, and the answer always is Palpatine because he's just better. He's just better at protecting the other 2 ships and keeping them alive, and that's just always been the answer. And now I don't think that's the case anymore. Nick and I both flew 3 small base Imperial ships recently. I had a lot of fun with them. Enjoyed the game very much as I flew with them. And now, I don't own Emperor Palpatine, so now I can just kind of, I can kind of ignore it and just run, my 3 Imperial ships, whether that's, Whisper, Quick Draw, Vessery, Omega Leader, Duchess, Pure Sabak. Like we've got Inquisitor, maybe. Imperials have so many awesome ships that have been needed Palpatine as a crutch. And now, with hopefully Zuckuss not being big in the game anymore, and without the ties efficiency and without Manaru mind link efficiency, I think that there's a real place for just 3 good Imperial ships to just be able to go in there and do well. Now, obviously, you're going to have games where your green dice just fail you miserably, and your ships blow up one after another. But that's the game. It's a dice game. You shouldn't be able to dodge, 2, 3 modified attacks because you've got Palpatine and auto thrusters and, focus evade, etc. You shouldn't be able to do that. It makes the game less fun overall, I think. So I'm really glad they changed Palpatine. I still think he's perfectly playable.
Absolutely.
I think that, yeah, and the thing they did as well is like it used to be you could roll over an asteroid and then just roll, and then if you missed, you could just change it, or if it was a hit, you could change it to a blank. Now, if you go over an asteroid, you have to declare a blank before you roll, and if you roll a blank anyways, it's wasted.
Yeah.
So, I saw some people were complaining about that on the forums and on the Facebook pages. If you're running an Imperial Ace and you fly over an asteroid, get better. Like,
Yeah.
I seriously, like, you have boost barrel roll. Like, look at your next turn and figure out where you want to be. Don't, if you end up on an asteroid, it's your own fault.
Yeah. I was
what I
just
mean? And
I was just
so-
flying a game yesterday, and like I haven't touched an asteroid in months playing X-wing, but I played a game yesterday, and the asteroid placement was right in the center. Everything was really weird, and between me and my opponent, we hit and took 8 damage. This is just ridiculous. Yeah, but I mean that usually, too good for asteroids. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think basically Emperor Palpatine, good nerf. I don't think a range restriction would have done anything, because I personally, every time I flew him, as like a proxy, I would just keep him in the fight. I was never one of those people to have the shuttle run away. It would always just follow in behind and shoot things. So I don't think a range restriction would have done anything. I think this is a good fix.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it opens up more gameplay for me, which I've learned to fly a few other ships, so it's good. It's productive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that is all the cards that got a real super change. Everything. The other major change in the game is they super clarified if 2 things happen at the same time, the turn player decides them the order that they go off. There's no I'm used to playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic and those kind of card games. I think I've said that in every episode at this point. But they have a very specific thing called a chain, which is a little complicated, but I figured that FFG would do that, would add that into the game, because it makes sense once you get used to it, but they didn't. They just said, go ahead, resolve it however you want to, because you are the turn player.
Yeah.
I like that. It keeps the game... It keeps your mind more in the field than, okay, which effect works how.
I think specifically also that's to help combat MindLink as well, because they use the example as chopper on the article, but also like thermal detonators, anything like that, or even a stress bot. I think you can do this if you have an effect or a set of attacks that can give 2 different things stress. You can choose which one gets stressed first, then MindLink gives it to the other person, then you give them an additional stress, so you can actually double stress a ship in a MindLink list now with thermal detonators, chopper. I think you can do it with a stress bot, because you've got your normal shot and then you've got your TLT shot. So if you were to shoot at one, give everyone stress, then shoot at the other one and give it a double stress, I think that would work. I'll have to check though. But so I think that's honestly just to clarify, people who are obviously going to be considering the stress bot, which is the Y-wing with the TLT and the R3 droid that gives both the attacker and the defender a stress. You're going to see that ship back in the game for sure.
Oh yeah.
Because we're going to the System Open in Syracuse in Naboo next weekend. And that's going to be the first big tournament, I think, where the FAQ is in effect. And so I think it's going to be very, very interesting to be a part of that tournament, where now I don't know what to kind of prepare for,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety out there now.
Yeah, and anyone could bring anything.
Right. That's the stress bot's definitely one big thing I'm afraid of. I feel like people are going to try to bring out Atanis or Paratani still.
Yeah, I think so, and I think the stress bot will be able to hurt them for a cheap amount of points. I think it's only like 26 points. It's not bad at all.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, actually, since we've gone over the FAQ, and was there anything else you guys wanted to talk about for the FAQ that we may have missed?
No, I'm good. The other stuff is very minor clarifications. Most of the stuff has pretty much been decided. They just kind of made it official.
Yeah. How about you, Nick? Anything?
How about rebel nerfs? Oh.
That T-65 X-wing, it's awful. It needs a nerf.
Yeah, like a -3 title.
Oh, I meant the other way. Like, it's too good. It was a joke.
Yes.
It was a bad joke. But yeah, so because of the FAQ, it's really altered a lot of our mindsets on what we're flying and how to fly things. And in response to that, we all have new shiny lists to run. Who wants to talk about what they're flying and what they're going to be bringing, well, most likely bringing to the Naboo in Syracuse?
I mean, if you don't want to go first, I got hit pretty hard with that, so I had to go back to the drawing board. I can start.
Do it.
He's dead now.
Someone threw him down a shaft.
Ha!
Ha ha.
Oh, Vader. No, I'm still not flying Vader yet. Well, I started to get a little interested in a few other ships. I've always loved the arc dodging ability of the Striker, as well as you really can't beat them for 24 points or 25 points. So I decided that I'm going to put one in there. So my total list is, starting with Quick Draw. I immediately was interested in what Quick Draw has to offer, considering you can make him have the stat line of a defender, so he doesn't get any big unfair boosts like the old defender would, but I have Quick Draw on there. PS9 really helps, especially with what I'm trying to do with my list. I put Lightweight Frame on there, so any big ships that throw a lot of dice at him, he's going to have a 3 on Agility, so that's nice. Of course, I put the title on there, and Elusiveness. Elusiveness pairs with Electronic Baffle very well. My goal here is I wanted to give Quick Draw a pretty good defensive boost. What I kept seeing is Quick Draw would go in, he'd lose the shields, and now he's just a standard ship. I mean, he had the benefit of reverse arc, which is pretty awesome, as well as a few other knickknacks here, but his primary was his being able to fire twice. Well, I love the way that it chains with Electronic Baffle. So my strategy with that is I'd go in, I'd be firing at you with a PS9, hopefully I'm firing first. And now if you fire on me, you're kind of asking for trouble, because Elusiveness, when defending, you may receive 1 stress token to choose 1 attack die. The attacker must re-roll that die. So now, not only am I telling you to re-roll 1 of your attack die on me, even if you perfect it up, maybe now you're down to 2, but I use Electronic Baffle, and I'm going to fire back at you. The FAQ came out and clarified that this combo here, you would finish your attack round, and then I would go in and be able to attack despite removing the stress with Electronic Baffle immediately. Really like that combo, but he's takes a lot of aggro, and he's pretty much the #1 target that people are flying at. I'm assisting him as another arc dodger. I have Duchess on there. What I have is Veteran Instincts and Adaptive Aileron. So he's not too pretty, he's not too much of a threat, but PS10 should be able to get around almost any arc dodger out there. And with Duchess's ability to turn off Adaptive Ailerons, which is basically a boost before you reveal your dial, he can, if as long as you fly him pretty well and it's not super congested, you can get behind someone no problem, especially if you end it with a barrel roll. Worst case scenario, you take an evade, and then you just kind of be ready for the hurt. Last one, still kind of shaky on this, but as long as I fly it right, I feel pretty confident, is Major Stridon, the Epsilon shuttle. I'm not really used to the big ships, being an Imperial flyer. Haven't flown him too much, except for the Cow, the Lambda, and he just kind of sat in the corner for a long time. But what I did is I put on General Hux. Been trying him out, not incredibly impressed, but the other 2 aces that I'm flying really need focus tokens. If you take Quick Draw Shield too quickly, then he's done. And Duchess, you put a crit through, and he's pretty much done. So General Hux will be able to give range 1 to 2, says General Hux, for a focus. But with Major Stridon, his pilot ability, everyone's taken at range 1 to 3. So semi-Tani Mind Link list, if you want to look at it that way. What I have on him as well is Systems Officer. Systems Officer pairs very well with Major Stridon. That says, after you execute a green maneuver, choose another friendly ship at range 1. That ship may acquire a target lock. Well, with Major Stridon, that's range 1 to 3, and I happen to have a Duchess that doesn't have the ability to gain a target lock. Now all of a sudden, he has a target lock. He's shooting 3 dice at you, hopefully 4 dice if he's range 1. Now all of a sudden, he's a threat. Because I see that this is a big ship, it bumps a lot, and I might not be able to get a lot of actions off early, I put on advanced sensors. So immediately before I reveal my dial, I may perform 1 free action. So that's pretty helpful considering if I use that, then I green, then I use that, then I green while using General Hux, he's pretty good assist. Problem is he can be a pretty big target. The added bonus of the 4 attack die is what I really like, but a lot of times it goes unmodified, so it's not too much of a threat to the other team unless I roll really well on natural dice. So that's pretty much my list. It focuses around staying pretty close together, but my ace is just doing the work, and if you underestimate Major Stridon, he'll hopefully throw a lot of dice at you. And that's hopefully what I'll be flying at System Open.
I gotta say, I really, really like this list. I haven't seen the 3 ships flown together, but the fact that you're using Duchess at a PS10 is really nice because it's more, hey, I have an ace that I can control rather than I have an ace that's going to shoot you. And the quick draw, I got a chance to taste quick draw, and he's delicious. I don't use what you do. I use push the limit with electronic baffle, which makes him significantly squishier, but I like that more.
Yeah, I'm traditionally a defensive flyer, so I like that combo. I might do push the limit, but I like quick draw to stay around for a while, which in my most recent playtest, Duchess just took care of business and flew right up against Pat's quick draw. So he had no shield immediately, so he only got to fire off once. But my quick draw, he was surprisingly defensive. That elusiveness really helped out. And, he's not necessarily an arc dodger, but there's nothing like a great strategy of just buzzing right by your opponent when they thought you were going to come up short and then shooting him through the rear arc. That's pretty helpful.
Oh yeah, that is so good. I really love doing that. It's one of those things you don't expect because it's a freaking TIE fighter, but the mobility of a TIE fighter on a small ship with a rear arc is so good.
Right, and one thing that I really found in this combo is a lot of people look at elusiveness and say, well, I just won't fire quick draw, no problem, so he won't be able to fire back at me on a second shot. And I'm not losing anything, so he only fires once. Well, I caught a few players in that scenario, and all I was able to do is do the 3 slew or the 1 hard bank. I'm like, oh, well, I gave myself stress. I get rid of my stress. I fire at you. Oh, yeah, it's still the activation round. So that was pretty helpful.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this would be a good time for me to talk about what I flew, because I flew against Nick's list twice over the weekend. The first list I flew as a Rebel list. It's a variant of the 5 A-Wings that have Snapshot and Crackshot as their EPTs.
Snap, crackle, pop.
That is correct. Really, really fun list to fly. The variant is actually something I found on the Stay on the Leader blog, which is a really great blog. And he actually had, he only had 3 A-Wings instead of 5. And then he replaced both of the A-Wings with TIE fighters, Rebel TIE fighters. So the first TIE fighter was Ahsoka with a Snapshot, that's it, and that's 19 points. And then with the last 21 points, he put in Sabine, and he gave her the title. He also gave her a Snapshot as well, so there's still 5 snapshots. And the most important thing, and I think Nick will agree with me, is he added Operations Specialist as the crew card, and that card did so much work. I mean, I how many focus did I get throughout that game? 20 focus from that card, just because Snapshot is just, you're so likely to miss. You know, I was completely whiffing or getting 1, which is the average. There was a couple times I did 2 or I did 1 and Nick blanked out, but plenty of times I missed. And then for my regular shot, I was able to be focused and or target locked, or have boosted, and still gotten a focus or focus evade. So I because of that, I don't think I ended up losing any of my ships. I was able to modify all of my dice, and all 5 ships have 3 evade dice. So between that and Snapshot being particularly good against the Nick's ships, Quick Draw and Duchess both have 2 attack dice, so they're much more likely to miss. Or I should say Snapshot's much more likely to hit when it comes to rolling those dice and trying to get through their defenses. But that was a really, really fun list to fly, and it's definitely on my list of casual lists that I would bring to, say, like a Hangar Bay event, or if we go to, I know we're going up to Toronto for the PTL Open, that format, which is going to be kind of more casual and looks a lot of fun. That's a list I might bring up there. So that was a lot of fun. The second list I flew against Nick was again, it was the quick draw list. Quick draw has my quick draw had fire control system, the title, and expertise. And the idea is basically, you take the target lock for the first shot, you have expertise for both of the shots, and then after you fire, you get your target lock back with fire control system. So you have 2 modified attacks. I'm not a huge fan of the electronic baffle variant of quick draw, because for the most part, if quick draw is able to be hit, then he's probably going to lose all of his shields in one turn anyways.
Yeah.
Especially if you've baffled one off, it's very unlikely that you'll be left with those 2 shields at the end of the turn. And if he is, I would say that your opponent has made a mistake. So I'm not a huge fan of the baffle variant of killing yourself. Even though in this game all 3 of my shields got knocked off in the first turn, I was still okay with that. And I still have a modified, shot for the next turn. Or rather, I didn't, because quick draw exploded. But that's what the ship does. But I essentially traded early on his Duchess for my quick draw. The rest of my list, I have a bomber with homing missiles and just extra munitions and long-range scanners, just as kind of a cheap threat. So, I put it right next to quick draw. If you don't shoot quick draw, that's fine. If you do, then you are going to get ordnance shot back at you. So that worked. That worked pretty well. Originally, I had to draw their fire on quick draw, so that if you did shoot at the bomber, I could take one of the crits. But I don't think that's very effective, and it's very variance-based. And then the last ship, because I always love to fly this ship, is Whisper. And Whisper is the standard layout with fire control system, veteran instincts, and advanced cloaking device. But I took out Agent Callus, which I know a lot of people like to put on her, and I put on Rebel Captive, which I think for the meta is going to be really great. We're just finished talking about Defender titles don't work when you have stress. We're talking about Zuckuss wouldn't work. If the ship with Zuckuss is the first one shooting at Whisper, then they won't be able to Zuckuss her dice because they'll be stressed. But I just think in general the stress mechanic is going to be really good in Rebel Captive. For me, Rebel Captive is probably is the best Imperial crew, and might be one of the best crew in the whole game period right now. And Whisper really won me that game. She almost single-handedly killed Major Strident. Was able to, many times get 4 or 5 hits on him and took him down in, I think, 3 or 4 turns. And then Whisper was also able to finish off quick draw as well, just because I'd kind of kept her out of the fight. And Nick, I think if you had a shield left, it would have been a different story. But luckily you didn't have any shields left, so you couldn't baffle and then attack me before I cloaked. So I think that was the big deciding factor in that game. But if you had a shield left and you could have baffled me before I cloaked, I think I would have been in trouble.
Yeah, I made a really bad decision. I forgot that it was 10 and then 9, because if I chose initiative on that, my quick draw would have been firing before your guy, and 2 defensive die, you would have gone down pretty quick.
Yeah. Yep, exactly, and that's what I was scared of. That's why I put him on completely the opposite side of the board, and I was ready to just run with him and just spend the game running until quick draw was gone. but then it ended up being quick draw. But I got his shields down before before you killed the rest of my ships, so that was good. I love quick draw. The only way I can see myself using the electronic baffle is to keep it as cheap as possible. So I do have a list that's just quick draw with electronic baffle and rage, because you can use those rerolls on both of the attacks.
Oh,
And then you just have to green next turn to get rid of the stress, so you can do it again.
that's a good
if you have any
idea.
shields left. So I don't know how much quick draw cost, but that's only 2 extra points on top of him, and that's a pretty dangerous ship for that low amount of points.
Yeah.
And if
want
I do
that.
fly this list again, yeah, if I do fly this list again, I'm definitely going to change some things. I don't think the bomber was super effective. The original idea of the list was that, like I said, that draw your fire right, so that you try and shoot the bomber down, but you can't, and it, quick draw double shoots you, double taps you, and then the bomber still gets to shoot because it didn't take a crit. But I think I've removed the bomber and I've actually put in pure sabak, just to have another threat. So if you do shoot quick draw, you're not shooting pure sabak, and so I think in that case I might actually make quick draw an electronic baffle quick draw, just so if you're shooting pure sabak, I'm going to get 2 and maybe even 3 uses out of that ability. And then I want to leave Whisper in because this is kind of a fun list for me, and I just want to keep flying Whisper. The only other thing I've flown is against you, Nate, and that was a Miranda Dash list,
Yeah,
which
you did.
I had lots of fun flying. I added thermal detonators too, again, because of the stress mechanic. I think is going to be real important in the new meta. And so for that, I found that extra point by dropping engine upgrade on Dash, and I just have the kind of cheap budget Dash now that's 52 points, that has Ray on it and Lone Wolf, and then just the heavy laser cannon. And then Miranda has got her TLT, and then she's kitted out with bombs, with cluster mines and thermal detonators. And I really liked that list. It flew really well. It was a lot of fun. Obviously, K-Wing has been my favorite ship for a long, long time, and Miranda has been one of my favorite pilots for a long, long time, so I'm well practiced with her. And she's probably the best. I think I've said this before, but she's probably the best Rebel ship. Now, after the FAQ, she might even be one. I wouldn't call her the best ship, but I think she would definitely be in contention for the best ship in X-Wing right now, just because of the different ways you can kind of kit her out, her regen ability, the fact that she can use bombs, use TLT, drop shields to make missiles hit even harder. There's so many ways to make her an effective ship. And so she's definitely on my radar as something I might bring next week. But I have to say, despite the fact that I've been having fun flying these lists, I have no idea what I'm going to bring to the System Open. No idea at all. Zero idea. My backup list is the list I flew at regionals, because I have the experience with it. But there's not one list that's jumping out at me as this is the list I'm going to run because I'm an expert at it. And that worries me a lot.
Yeah,
I don't know
too.
about you guys. Do you guys have a list picked up? I think, Nick, you're going to stick with your current list. But Nate, I mean, I will get to what you're flying now, but I'd be interested to hear how firm you are on the list you're flying and whether you're going to take them to System Open as well.
Yeah. I will say that I'm definitely going to be bringing up. I finally have something to talk about during the salty section, and it's definitely going to be about Miranda. But I'll get back to that. I'll get into my list. I don't know. Right now, it has a 1-1 record, 1 win, 1 loss, and I usually don't like to bring something to a big tournament unless it's got like a 3-0 record. But yeah, it's I kind of originally thought, what can I do to stop Paratani? It wasn't a like. It was it basically just came down to screw that list. It's not fun to fly against. I just felt like I got totally trounced and I had no control over the game whatsoever. So I was trying to think of what could do to stop it, and that's where the list started. But it definitely evolved a lot from there. So I'm going to read off what I'm flying, quote unquote, so you can get a look. So it's Asajj Ventress. Of course, can't beat Paratani with anything else. Join Paratani. So Asajj. Using the gyroscopic targeting, of course, the Shadowcaster title, expertise, and Let's Razzie, so that I can do the crazy shit that Asajj always does. 48 points, which I feel like is a good place, but it doesn't leave me a lot of wiggle, or it leaves me a lot of wiggle room for other ships. But yeah, the other ship, one other ship I'm running is Palub. He's like one of my favorites. I got vectored thrusters on him, adaptability because why not? I actually wasn't using that EPT. Ion cannon turret and Dengar. Funny thing about him or about this ship is I've always run TLT with it, and it's kind of like the go-to turret. Why not? But I looked a little bit more thoroughly, and with the advice of some other people, I started looking at the ion cannon turret because it still does 1 damage if you hit, but it also applies an ion, which, I mean, depending on what you're up against, could be good, could be bad, doesn't matter. But the fact that TLT is range 2 to 3 and Palb's ability is 1 to 2, I found a lot of the times I wasn't getting both effects off. And the points were kind of going to waste. It was basically just like a more expensive Y-Wing. And I was like, why not just run a Y-Wing at that point? But I love Palab's ability. I love stealing focus tokens. So I switched it over to the Ion Cannon turret, and since then I've been loving the ship built like this on its own. In this list, I don't know. We'll get to that eventually, but Palab is my second ship. And the third ship is my new favorite buddy, the Quad Jumper. I'm specifically using Unkarplut with the Space Tug Tractor Array, Tactician, and Primed Thrusters. I built him that way to conserve on points, and he can, with Tactician, apply some stress. Space Tug Tractor Array, he applies Tractor Beam tokens, and Prime Thrusters just keeps him mobile. I love Prime Thrusters. It's great to go backwards and barrel roll just for fun. So overall, the main common thing among this list is I'm going to be using every single token in the game except for a stealth device, cloaking token. This is I call this list just control, and it very much is just control. Apply stress, apply ion, apply tractor beam tokens, do everything possible to slow down your opponent, so that you can start putting in work. This list doesn't have a whole lot of muscle. I mean, expertise with Asajj is probably going to be the strongest thing I got, but it's more about just putting your opponent in those situations where they're like, what do I do? And when you're up against small ships, it's good. It's really good. Like, this list is really, really good against small ships. But I've run into a series. I played against Pat with 2 large ships, and even though what won it for me is the fact that Tactician with Unkarplut and Asajj's ability to apply stress just was piling on stress onto dudes who needed to not be stressed, and yeah, kind of forced him in. First time playing this list, I had a lot of fun with it. I didn't want to chalk it up to, I won, so it was fun, but I kind of feel like it might be that way. The second time I played it, I wasn't as into the game, right from the get-go. I wasn't super excited about playing this list. It was just annoying, and I got totally destroyed completely by my own hand. I let it happen real bad because I made bad decisions, and yeah, it's a very competitive list, but it's one of those things that you look at it and you're like, well, I'm just flying this because it's good, and it might not be any fun, and I might get really sick of this 2 games into a tournament and be like, okay, I'm done. I feel like I might need 4 or 5 more games under my belt of this list before I decide whether or not to bring it, but unfortunately, I don't have that kind of time. So I'm gonna try to get another game in this week. If I'm gonna take a little aside. We're in upstate New York right now, and there's so much snow coming down right now. It's basically like we're in Hoth, and yeah, it's pretty bad out there. So I was gonna be playing today, but
I was gonna say, don't forget about the blizzard or the tornado-style winds we had last week, which left half the county, 100,000 people without power.
Oh yeah. So it's. I don't know what's going on here, but it's getting in the way of me playing X-Wing, so that's what matters in life right now.
Agreed.
But yeah, that's what I'm flying, and okay, I posted on the. I'm part of the Nova Squadron Facebook group, as well as I'm sure a lot of the people out here that are listening to this are. And I remember posting this list, and it's just a very basic thing. And I had Dengar on Uncarplet, or not Uncarplet, but the one up quad jumper with Snapshot originally. And I know Snapshot you can't use Dengar with, but I just like Dengar on a 2 dice ship. And I remember Paul Heaver actually commented on my list and just basically said, "Hey, I think Dengar would put in a lot more work on Pellup." And I'm like, "Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, especially with the ion turret. It'll really guarantee that 1 damage getting in and stuff." But there was like a quick moment where we're still new to the community-ish, like the 3 of us are. So I was like, "Oh, cool! That guy just commented. Oh my God, that's Paul Heaver. Oh my God!" And I had like a little starstruck moment. Yeah.
That's the way, Nate. You react every time I say something too. You're amazed that I would scoop so low as to talk X-wing with you. I assume.
I mean, you can keep pretending you're good at this game, but that's you can. We all like playing pretend.
I got a participation medal. I'm good at this game, right?
Yeah. So like I'm very on the fence and not confident about this list. I would actually like your guys' feedback on this list real quick. Like, do you have anything to say about this list? Good, bad, and different.
I do. I have something to say, Nate. This is an intervention.
Okay.
This is not actually a podcast.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, I know you wanted to practice the list, so I picked. This was the Dash Miranda that I flew against you the second time. Higher pilot skill, crazy maneuvering, very, very accurate shots, bombs, which I didn't end up dropping, but I have them. So I think the danger is, and I immediately went for Asajj. There was practically no hesitation on my part to go to Asajj, because once she was dead, you have the quad jumper, which is 2 dice, and then you have the ion turn, which will only ever do 1 damage. So as soon as Asajj is gone, your damage output just drops off the face of the earth. So your strategy has to be kill things before Asajj dies.
Yeah.
And against things like K-Wings, against maneuverable ships like Dash, or if we see like Arc Dodgers come back into style with maybe push the limit interceptors, or Whisper, or even the Protectorate fighters, which I think with push the limit, they're if you don't want to bother with the title, you can put push the limit and auto thrusters, and they're a pretty decent ship as far as I'm concerned. So these sorts of things, higher pilot skill, are going to be able to melt Asajj fairly quickly. I was able to play the range game really well with both my ships, so you were able to stress and then use that stress as an evade. You also, if I remember correctly, didn't roll great green dice.
Yeah, I'm never gonna blame dice for something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It happens
because there'll be games like that where you rolled some evades, but it wasn't like you were rolling in evades, pun intended. So I think that's honestly the main feedback from me, is that when I try and create a list, unless it's just for fun, I try and make sure every ship is going to be an endgame ship, which is hard to do and doesn't always work. But and it's easy for me because I build a lot of 2 ship lists, so I can just make them both kind of endgame ships, and then let my opponent choose which one to destroy.
Yeah.
But I really feel like that once Asajj is gone, if you're going up against a defender, because they're going to get that evade still, even because your list doesn't give out stress.
Maybe
a lot of ships are going to be able to. Yeah.
My list gives out
What
stress.
does?
Yeah, it's like Asajj gives out stress, but Tactician also is the big thing because people ignore the quad jumper.
Oh yeah, that's right. You have Tactician on the quad jumper. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But that's my main worry for the list, is that people will kill Asajj, and then against decent lists, that's pretty much that, right? Unless
Yeah.
you've killed something first.
Yeah, I kind of felt that when I lost that game, and like the higher pilot skill really killed it.
Yeah, and being a 6 is not, I mean, it's not that high, and now the defenders are kind of going away a little bit, and you'll probably see less of them. And, those were the ships that could be pilot skill 5 and 6 because they were good. I think now you'll see people taking higher pilot skill things, like especially Imperials. Like, Nick's got a 9 and a 10. I had a 9 and two 9s. So I think you're going to see those higher pilot skill ships come back in and be able to kind of maneuver out of arcs, etc.
Yeah. Nick, did you have anything on the list?
I do. Stop stealing my evade tokens from Palab. Stop it.
Overpowered, nerf.
There's nothing. Every time I play against Palab, I don't know if he's your favorite partially because you've flown it so many times against me, but with an Imperial trying to make his evade simply because he's trying not to let his 3 or 4 hull blow up, and you took his defense, and he can't fire at you because it's a net 2 swing. That is so. It feels so grimy.
Yep. I love that. I mean, that's pretty much exactly why I love Palab. He just gets in the way, and it's like, shoot me, or you get screwed.
Yep. I guess the only redeeming factor is that his dial pretty much sucks.
Yeah.
You know what, Padlob, though, like the first turn, every single game does. I've played him so many times because, like you said, Nate, you love that ship. Every single time, the first turn, it gets me. I always forget. It's like, oh, you're gonna steal my focus. I totally forgot about Palab. But then after that, I just don't focus or evade anymore. And that in itself is good. But you have vector thrusters on Palab, right? Currently.
Of course.
Yeah, never take that off. That's just such. I mean, okay, there's a new mod coming that can regen shields for Hawks, but
no.
The ability to barrel in and out of range, especially when you're kind of doubling down on the ion turn, being range 1 to 2, vector thrusters, real good.
Yep. Don't forget, I have range 1, 1 dice or range 1 2 dice in my main arc. I can totally do it, just in case. God, why did they do that? It's awful.
Yeah, I actually have an idea. Like, I was trying to think of the Hawk fixes because of there's a couple new cards coming out that they're clearly they had the Hawk in mind when they designed it to kind of regen a shield if you only have one. I was really thinking about the Hawk and how would you fix it? And I really feel like they should get a Hawk only turret that says you have a turret that's 2 dice, it's 360 range 1 to 3, or out of your front arc you can shoot 3 dice, or maybe 2.
That's all the turret does. You are a normal ship. Welcome to the game.
Yeah. So you can't take exactly. So you can't take TLT, but then the plus point is if you're in the front arc, you become a 3 dice tech ship, which is not super crazy or anything. I don't know how many points it would have to cost. I'm not good at that stuff with balancing, but I want to fly a. Like, for me, I would never fly without TLT, and I would never, even Ion Turret, or maybe Auto Blast a Turret I would, but it annoys me that you have to take a turret, because, the named pilots are pretty pricey for the chassis they're on, then you put a turret on top, and it's just like, nah, I'm going to take another ship.
Yeah. On that note, actually, let's move on to the next section, which I think I'm going to skip Salty for now. We can get back to... did anyone have anything salty they want to talk about? I want to complain about Miranda, but anyone else?
No, I'm good.
No, I got really nothing to be salty about.
Good. Okay, so we'll skip that for now. I might come back to it. But I wanted to talk about... since the FAQ came out, it was all like, okay, cool, this is the big news. But right after that, they released the small preview for the C-Rock for Scum that is introducing a ton of new interceptors, or interceptor mod shit, and new cards, and a buff for Rebels and Scum. I new shit. This is cool. I gotta say I'm mostly excited about what Pat you were talking about, the Hawk. Well, it's a buff that says it's a mod that says you can go on any ship that has one shield, and at the end of your turn you can regenerate a shield and get an ion token. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like that. It's it's Scum or Rebel only, which is the first time they do two faction like that, and would be yeah. It would be just absolutely broken in Imperials.
Well, the idea that a Mega Leader could have regen, game over.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's correct.
But that's when it first came out. I know Pat and I were talking a lot about it and just spreading our knowledge all over our Facebook groups and shit. And we were excited mostly because like all these new ships that are coming out. Pat, if you could pull a couple up so we could talk about it. All these new ships that we're talking about, like, they're not super OP. They're not gonna change the game. They just are really fun, and they can totally make interceptors like a ship you'll want to bring in a build, but just bring like one maybe, or you can be like, fuck it, I'm gonna run a swarm of them, and it's still viable. Like, it's a ship that needed some love and definitely is getting some love because no one bought them and there was no reason to buy them, as opposed to the Star Viper, which will never see love because everyone bought them because of auto thrusters.
Yeah, I comment on in a big part of the Shuttle Tiberian Facebook group. Their podcast, highly recommended. They do a lot of casual stuff. I think we've mentioned them before, but I'm constantly on their Facebook chatting with the folks there, and I think the general agreement was these things are great for the game, but none of them off the bat seem super overpowered, which is exactly what you want to see from the new cards, right? We don't want another Defender title.
Right.
So yeah, so I'm very, very happy, especially that PS1 pilot. I actually really like a lot, just because of how easy it is to make her worth the points, because she's so cheap. So do you want me to go ahead and read that one?
Yeah, go ahead and read a couple of them.
All right, so the PS1 she's a new pilot. Her name's Sunny Bounder. She has a pilot ability. Once per round, after you roll or re-roll dice, if you have the same result on each of your dice, you can add one matching result. So
That's neat.
I love this card, and here's the reason why. Pretend that pilot ability doesn't exist. Put lightweight frame onto the ship, and you have a great, probably the best blocker in the game right now. Add on top of that this ability, which again, when you roll 2 attack dice, is not exceptionally unlikely to proc. It's not too difficult to roll 2 hits, and you've got a blocker that can actually do some damage. And of course, there's always those times where you get lucky and you roll all evades or something. Mm-hmm. Or if you have focus and you roll all focus. So I really, really love this ship. With the Seek Interceptor title, she goes down to 12 points, which is the price of the cheapest ship. C-95, TIE Fighters, etc. And so this makes her just so much better than any other 12-point ship in the game. She's fantastic. Almost makes you want to fly Scum and just start out with 12 points and then go from there.
Yeah. There's now correct me if I'm wrong for this, but if I read it the way I think I did and the way people were talking about it, you can essentially say roll 2 dice, blank out on both of them, add a hit to the result, and then spend a target lock to re-roll your 2 blanks. Is that right?
You're right, sort of. So you don't add a hit, you add the same result as you have. So if you rolled 2 blanks, you rolled a 3rd blank, and then you could spend your target lock to re-roll all of them.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Just like force.
For 12 points, okay, if you think that that needs to go, shoot at it, but I wouldn't shoot at that. You know, the list probably has other threats, and it's got a great ability. It's a great blocker. Because it's PS1, it can move into blocking position, take that action, whether it's a focus or evade for defense, a barrel roll to get in blocking position. It's great. It's an absolutely fantastic card.
I got a question about that.
Yep.
Sure.
Because I didn't review that at all, actually, because it doesn't pertain to me at all. If you roll 2 blanks, then you add a blank, and then you target lock, and you ended up getting 3 hits, do you now get 4 hits?
I believe it says once per turn, but I'm actually just gonna. Yeah, it's once per round.
Once per round. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So negative.
Okay. Because if you went from 2 blanks to 4 hits, oh my god, sign me up.
That would be so sweet.
That'd be amazing. A lot of the podcasts are doing like bounties. That would be like a bounty-worthy event to happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be so sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's quickly go over some of the other ones too. I can't pronounce her name. Inaldra. I'm just gonna call her Inaldra. So she's a PS3. She's a unique pilot, and she says, and this is actually pertinent to the modification we just discussed. When attacking or defending, you may spend 1 shield to reroll any number of your dice. She does have an EPT, and she's pilot skill 3.
Mm-hmm. That's. I never liked, like with Nick, with your list, the using quick draw with electronic baffle, and I forget the name of the card, but the thing that lets you reroll one of your opponent's dice.
Elusiveness.
Yeah. I was never a huge fan of re-rolling your opponent's dice when it has anything to do with damage, because like, okay, your opponent rolled 3 damage on you. I'm gonna make you re-roll one of your dice. Oh, cool! That 1 damage is now a blank, but you took a damage to do it. So, yeah. And like in this case, I don't like. I mean, it would be great to be like, oh my god, you just rolled 5 dice. I'm dead unless I roll 2 evades perfect, or at least 2 evades, and you blank out.
Well,
you could be like, I'll take 1 shield. Yep. Mm-hmm. Just yep. Mm-hmm. But
the reason why I like evasiveness to begin with, regardless of electronic baffle, I mean, electronic baffle is only 1 point, so it's like, why not?
yeah.
But either way, the entire game I'll be doing it, because my greens are all 1, all my 1s and my 2 and 3 straightforward. And with his reverse arc, I can just have you reroll for the rest of the game, and all I do is get a stress. So I can just de-stress next turn.
Right.
So that's why I added that.
Yeah. The idea of rage on that, though, just sounds so sexy. Ugh. Thank you, Pat. I want that.
Yeah, and Nick, is quick draw 29 points? I'm gonna look it up. I think it's 29 points.
Yeah.
But if that's whatever it is, let's say it's 29 points. That's a 31-point quick draw. That's pretty good for the amount of points you're getting there. You know what I mean? Like, that's, I think Poe just by himself, the PS9 Poe is 31 points. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really, like a kind of cheap, just go in there and just blow stuff up. So it's I don't know. I just like that rage build, and I might, air quotes, might use it in a build in a little bit. So I'm looking up the card because I have to know. Yeah, he's 29 points. So for that build is just, without putting lightweight frame on it, is 31 points. And if you want to, if you use him with the Upsilon, you can actually coordinate the rage. So then when you do a green maneuver, you've actually removed both of your stress before you even move. Then you get to actually do a regular action, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Wait, to remove both the stress?
Yeah, because if you coordinate if you coordinate rage as an action,
Right.
you can baffle off one of the stress. Then you move
Oh, I
and do
gotcha.
a green, stress goes away, and then you can focus, and you maybe already have a focus with rage. So maybe you put sensor cluster on there. You can turn a blank to an evade with sensor cluster with double the focus, keep
Right.
them around for a little bit longer, something like that. I just think it's a really cool idea. But I'm always looking to use rage because I think it's a cool card with actual drawbacks that I always try and get around.
Yeah. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see more combos come out, and that's kind of like the FAQ dropped this big bomb on us that said, "Hey, get creative, go," and it's
Yeah.
sweet.
Yep. Exactly. So just to get back to the Seek pilots, this pilot is just trash to me. The ability, even though you can add the modification that can regen or shield, to spend a shield to reroll one dice. To reroll any number of your dice. Okay, then that's a little better, but I don't know, to spend one of your 3 or 4 life to get a target lock, I don't think that one's going to see a lot of play, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right.
I don't know about you guys. Would you put this in a list?
Yes, I would only put it in a list that is going to be silly and stupid. And honestly, the thing I would probably put it with is the mod that gives her heavy laser cannon, and then put the regen on it. So the idea is it's just a very slow moving, because you'd be doing a 1 every turn. You just burn that damage, regen it, burn it, regen, and just keep going forward while using the heavy laser cannon.
Gotcha. All right.
But that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, see, my thing is that because you're doing the 1 forward, and heavy laser cannon is range 2 to 3, pretty much every ship knows where you're going to be, so all they have to do is walk into range 1 of you, and then all of a sudden, goodbye. I mean, I guess you can still make it cheap enough where it kind of doesn't matter, but I don't know. I in my head, I just don't care for that that ship. I don't think it's going to see competitive play.
Right.
All right, so the next one is a pilot skill 6. He's Quinn Jast. At the start of combat phase, you may receive a weapons disabled token to flip one of your discarded missile or ordnance upgrade cards face up. So he can basically recharge his torpedoes. He's 18 points and he has an EPT.
That's awesome.
That's not too bad.
That's
It's pretty
awesome.
pretty fun.
It's like a cheaper, easier way to do salvage crane, and
Yeah.
you can if you're flying an interceptor, I think they have a 5K or a 4K, so you can just fly by 5K. You're not going to shoot anyways, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. And they almost act kind of like a regen ship, where regen, they'll come into the battle to take shields. They get stripped off, and then they basically just fly out of the battle, regen, turn back in. This is kind of the same thing, right? Because you're not going to be shooting. After you fired your missile, you can just bug out, not shoot for the next round, and then come back in with another missile. My problem is once you put the missiles on there, and you have to put the heavy title on there, so you're starting out at 20 points. Even if you put a 3-point missile on there and don't use your EPT slot, you're already at like 23 points. It starts getting pricey at that point, but still a really interesting ability that if you're creative and fly it right, it can be really good.
Right. Yeah, that sounds cool. Any others?
Yeah. There's one more, and I feel like you're gonna love this one the most. It's Pilot Skill 7, Genesis Red, and the pilot ability says, after you acquire a target lock, assign focus and evade tokens to your ship until you have the same number of each token as the locked ship.
Yep.
So, yeah, 19 points. Throw a tiny mind link on this thing right now.
Yeah.
I think this is a really, really cool ability. Like, I would definitely put this in a tiny mind link list. It's really, really fantastic.
Right. Yeah, it's like that is one of the coolest abilities. I saw that and was immediately like, "Yep, I'm putting that up." Mm-hmm.
And you know what? He's a pilot skill 7, so you know what you're going to do, right? You're going to it's the same with Whisper. I think VI is just going to be staple to this guy because you want to move as late as possible in the round. Because if you move before pilot skill 8 guys, they won't have any focus or evade yet. So I feel like you staple VI to this thing, and then you can't because you have to put a mind link on.
Yep.
Damn you, game, for making rules. Then it's a tough choice.
That's
honestly,
fair.
If you're not in a mind link list, you put VI on, and if you are, then you put mind link on. I think.
I would honestly be okay with just using him with adaptability. Or fuck, no, you can't. Okay, all right, a tiny mind link. Good, done. Problem solved. No questioning. Yeah.
Yeah, but those are the new interceptors. I think they're all pretty fun. Honestly, the Pilot Skill 7 here and the Pilot Skill 1 are the standouts for me. The other two are very meh. But not every ship can have like an amazing ability that's instantly usable, and So I think it's a good set of ships, and I think you'll see a lot more Seeks coming, being played.
Right. That is a lot. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff coming, and I'm really excited for it. And I feel like they've slowed down a little bit, which is kind of nice. We will talk more about the Sea Rock and Epic when we actually get around to playing another Epic game. Now that we can all have our own Epic ship, yay! But honestly, like I don't care. Like I'm way more excited about the Interceptors becoming a thing than the Epic ship. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't FAQs. I thought they were going to make Zuckuss small ship or large ship only, so you can still put Zuckuss on an epic ship. I really like building epic ships because you do it so little, and there's not like a meta out there that you can just basically do what you want.
Right.
So I enjoy kind of the scope of epic game, but it does take a while, and sometimes you've lost games in half an hour, and you still have to play like 3 more hours of the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are going to be some cool cards coming out in that pack. I think the epic ship, does look nice as well, but we'll talk about that a little more in the next episodes.
Yep. Speaking of next episodes, we're gonna the competitive season is coming to a close, which means we have to kind of figure out what content we want for future episodes. We already have a couple ideas. So in the limelight, you are going to see an episode about epic games. You're going to be seeing an episode about custom games, like just redesigning X-Wing for funsies and lulz, and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
Nick, did you have anything you wanted to say? You kind of popped in.
No, nothing to say. I'm pretty excited. We've definitely, over the years of playing this game, had a lot of variations. Some have been duds, some have been extremely exciting, but I'm excited to talk about that. And but I'm more excited to play 12 games of X-Wing in one weekend, maybe?
Buh! That's going to hurt.
Yeah.
I actually hope I get knocked out so I can go play Hangar Bay. I like the idea that you can choose multiple lists.
Right.
And like we're also going up in April to this is probably a good time to talk about it, the Prototype Toronto League Open, which is April 22nd to 23rd. And it just looks like such a great event. As soon as someone told me about it at the regional, one of the guys from up there who I played, and as soon as he was describing to me, I was like, I'll be there. Just tell me when it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a 6-game tournament, but they have it kind of different so that you bring 3 lists, and you don't have to choose all of them. But if you do play every list at least once, you get an extra match point win. And the really cool thing that they're doing in order to keep it very casual is instead of playing all of those games in a row, which can sometimes be a slog, you're doing 3 games for each day for the tournament. And then starting around 2, they're doing all of these cool side events like Mario Kart and other things like that. Hunger Games, Heroes of the Detroit Cluster, which I've played, and Nick and Nate, I really need to get you to play that. It's super fun. So they're doing all these awesome side events where after you've played 3 games of competitive, you can just kind of relax and screw around and try combinations with people you haven't played against. So normally when I'm trying something out for the first time or it's just a fun list, I'm playing you guys, right? I'm not taking those to a competitive scene or to like the store to practice. But here I can bring those lists or those ships and just kind of have a little fun. So if you're in the Rochester, or really if you're in the Northeast, U.S. or Canada, it's going to be in Toronto on April 22nd and 23rd. Highly recommend you make it up there. Everyone I met at regionals from Canada was super nice, and can't wait to go up there and play with them.
Yeah, and we're also going to be at the Syracuse Naboo Open next weekend. This weekend. This weekend?
Yep, this weekend, the 18th and 19th.
So if you hear this and you like us, come say hi. We don't bite. And yeah, it'd be great to see people who listen to us and like to pay attention to our bullshit, because we're full of it. But yeah, that's. I think I'm just gonna wrap it up there. Did anyone have any final thoughts or final tips for everybody? Anybody? Nick, I like your idea. Bring plenty of water.
Yep.
Drinking is good. Bring a flask too.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I get better at pretty much any game I play when I start drinking. But I do. We here at 585 Squadron do not condone public alcohol. Pat, I didn't hear you at all. I was trying to cover myself legally. Don't worry about it.
I said I'll turn X-Wing into a drinking game. Like I'll do it for the System Open.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm down.
Yeah, we're definitely doing it. Nick, I did like your tip that you said earlier today. I forgot what it was, but I liked it. So, if you're hearing this podcast, go back to where Nick said something cool, and then listen to that. Oh yeah, we're professional here. So anyway, if you want to get in touch with us, we have a Facebook group. We have 585 Squadron podcast. We have an email address, 585squadron@gmail.com. You can check our podcasts out anywhere where they feed podcasts from SoundCloud or anywhere else. We are 585 Squadron. You can check out our YouTube channel, and we've streamed one game so far. We will be streaming more games in the future once I'm done finagling with the computer that we use to stream. And we are just 585 Squadron everywhere. They're included. So check us out, and yeah. Thanks for listening to 585 Squadron. I'm Nate. I fly scum.
I'm Pat. See you, everyone.
Nick.
My name's Nick. Bye, everyone.
You want to say bye, Nick? Do you like these people? Are you still muted? You're still muted. You want to say bye? No? You're not muted anymore. Almost got it. Alright, bye everyone.
Bye.
We're passing through the magnetic field.